That's not feng shui at all.
Absolutely not stuff that way.
That's much better.
Huge.
Awesome.
Huge difference.
Huge. Well, we are huge here at the Behemoths.
I'm huge.
Let's use that as our intro. Welcome everybody to episode 7 of the Old World Behemoths. It's been a little while. We've had a bit going on. We're going to talk today about the Big Bomb. Tom has prepared a 23-slide presentation for us to take us through the changes around the match play guide, all the things that you need to know from Tom's perspective, at least, around how competitive play may change going into the future. We're also going to talk a little bit around Winter Warfare that Alex and I had the pleasure of attending very recently. And then we'll do the usual. We'll cover off our hobby and what's coming up, and a big plug for our event coming up at the end of this month. I hope someone put a slide in for that. But if we have not, that's okay. Let's move on to thank our patrons, please.
Does someone want to speed edit the slides?
It's fine. It's fine.
The most important thing that we've ever done, and we've forgotten to put a slide for it. Yeah, that's okay.
Alex will do it in the background, or Chris if he's hosting the presentation back.
Yep.
Fabulous. We'll come to the next slide anyway. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Thank you to our patrons. As usual, you help make sure that we keep getting to do this ridiculous garbage. Thank you, Death1942, Ghost Joshua 6, Silver Dave, Jeff, and Gomo. Gomo, I promise you'll get the opportunity to talk about why you're a behemoth at some point. We know you've been hankering to explain to us why, when you get the opportunity to come on, that you are a behemoth. But we'll come around to that. 25 creative.
Well, he was upset we didn't ask Andrew.
Oh, well, I mean, maybe we can have them both back and we can talk to them both specifically. We can spend an entire episode talking about why they're behemoths. Thank you to 25 Creative, as always, for all of our graphic design artwork and helping us keep these packs beautiful and pretty. By all means, check them out. Okay, well, this is easy. Alex, you went to Winter Warfare and you did pretty well.
Yes, well, Demons were on a 6-winning streak with them, specifically hard-tailored to capture table quarters, banners, basically MSU avoidance demons, and much to the chagrin of Alistister, the 5+ ward save being on all the time was an incredible boon. Let's call it that.
A boon. A demon boon.
Just to clarify, that's from the Renegades pack, right?
That's from the Renegades pack, yeah. And there were many times in many of the games where if that was not the case, it would be 0-3. I'll tell you that. So, game 1 I played against Dave, who grudged me. On the left-hand side, you can see the much talked about duel between the Great Unclean One and his prophetess with a dragon slaying sword.
And how did that go, Alex?
Well, after much manifesting of the miscast, he didn't miscast, but unfortunately for Dave, he rolled a 9. So it just cast, and I had my level 3 Exalted Flamer in range to dispel. I think I rolled like a 10, like it was like just by 1.
I think the one thing that we need to realize is that Alex, for the years that we've all played games together, he has these special dice that he just they suddenly appear. Yeah. And we all know in behind the scenes there's a lot
warped.
of microwaving going on.
Yeah, they're like
there's
out
a lot
of shape.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't land on the table properly, so he can be like, oh, that's cocked, I have to re-roll it. And he just keeps going until he rolls a 5 or 6.
It's got 6s on all sides.
I'm low-key convinced about 10 years ago, Alex went and took a dice rolling class, and it's basically just gotten him to the point where he can pick up a handful of dice and roll
the GW dice. That's the GW Armageddon dice.
Infinite 5s.
But also the way that he moves his wrist is very... It's fancy
specific.
And it's beautiful.
It's
an
very
artwork.
Specific.
It's practice.
Now, but what I'm hearing, Alex, sorry to just interrupt for a second, but what I'm hearing is that playing to the mission pack, having a universal 5+ ward save, and perhaps having 12 levels of magic, kind of worked in your favor.
10. Thank you.
Oh,
10
sorry.
levels of magic. But
Sorry.
yes,
Oh, look
cast
at
level
that.
4s. Cast level 4s. I mean, yeah, we've discussed this on multiple episodes, but Steed of Shadows is insane in this kind of scoring, in that scoring mission pack. We need to fly scoring units around the board. But, Dave and I, we had that moment. He said, I'm going for it. Could have gone either way, right? And we knew whoever connected, if the prophetess didn't kill the Great Unclean One, she was gonna get wiped. And so unfortunately that did happen. And thus I think I only just got that game because Dave, it was a very minor win on that one, and basically came down to exactly that moment, like winning by the amount of points that the prophetess was, because the rest of the board was filled with Pegasus Knights flying around, killing units, etc. But game 2, I went into Matt Willis, which was a rematch. Matt was also, I also played him in the previous Old Hammer, and his Dark Elves, and basically his list was all about skirmishing, shooting. What are the chariots called, Alistair? The ones with the bolt throwers?
Scourge Runner chariots.
Scourge Runners, yes, yeah. They were quite fast and good at shooting. Warlocks, etc. A Manticore, Beast Lord, gosh. Beastmaster, thank you. And basically it became very much just a game of the objectives. And again, it just came down to being able to move units of magic around the board. Probably in that game, the summoning was most effective because it was against, obviously, toughness 3 elves hitting them. But Matt was actually able to kill the Great Unclean One through just pure pushing through lots of crossbow bolts. Every turn, just shots upon shots. And then it's like 2 wounds, 2 wounds, 2 wounds. You can see here my castle deployment on the right-hand side against Matt, where I basically stayed like that for 3 or 4 turns. And it was just the fat boy up front soaking, shooting where we could. Because it was all about controlling table quarters, but Matt didn't make it easy. By no means,
the Tau Empire of the fantasy universe.
Of it, yep. So, I mean, he's a very skilled player, and he's on his way to Masters. So, that came out again just as basically, it almost came down to literally the last dice roll of the game, where he just needed to kill some pink horrors and didn't get enough wounds through or something, and I basically had a banner in the table.
So when you lost the Great Unclean One, because I don't know how many points that one is,
440.
Did you feel pressure then that you had to push out and score heaps of points to catch up? Were you behind?
100%. Because and Matt knew that too, right? If you kill, well, actually, I think we had a quick chat about it, which was when the Great Unclean was on 2 wounds, you're already getting 220 points. But if you kill him, it's pretty much the same amount of points as scoring a table quarter. So he's like, yeah, I definitely want to get that. And then if I get the table quarter, it would have been a draw, effectively. Right. So it was a very close game. A good rematch after that, because when I first played Matt, it was literally his first game, not his first game of fantasy, but his first game back into the old world itself.
The square-based stuff. Yep,
exactly. So I'm glad he stuck with his Dark Elves and had a very, call it, thematic skirmish list, which was fun to play against. And in my third game, I played against Ewan and his Empire, double Great Cannons, a Steam Tank, which I just could not kill. Great Unclean One was going up against it, Demigryph Knights, etc., a wizard. But critically in that game, my Soul Grinder charged the Steam Tank, lost by 1. This would be an easy roll. Rolled double 6. It teleported back to the wall. Away it went. And even Ewan was like, I don't think you got the rule right, man. And I'm like, trust me, dude, it's gone. It's gone. It's completely out of there. So, yeah. So I did manage to get 3 wins out of the day using the list. And all of them were minor. None of them were top 20 nils. In fact, the list was basically designed. You can't do it. I said this before. You can't really wipe the entire army using demons, but I'm more fascinated now with the recent changes, how this is going to look, because you certainly could not take that army to the next Old Hammer. Well, we don't know what the missions are yet, but there's no way, because units of 7 Plague Bearers are not scoring.
Not in
And
the
what
new
was
match
your,
playbook.
what was your
No.
final result?
I came fourth.
Nice.
Fourth out of how many, Alex?
40.
Nice.
Not bad.
That's
40.
great.
Not bad.
And you're now the top Demons player.
Certainly
Demons,
top Renegades.
Demons.
Certainly
Yes.
top Renegades.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Redeemed.
Red and clean one.
Totally
All right.
redeemed.
Good chance to move on to Alistair.
So as we've covered previously, my list was very much centered around the big juicy unit that's in all three of those pictures, the Witch Elf with Cauldron Block.
Such a cool looking unit.
It's such a fabulous unit, and thank you, Alex, for the bespoke printed movement tray that allowed me
to somehow fit the cauldron on it.
That allowed me to fit everything as I needed to. But yeah, I mean, it performed in exactly the way that I expected, and that meant that when things were going really good, they were going really good, and when things did not go really good, they went really bad. So I went 1 and 2. My first match was against dwarves, so that's on the right hand side. Josh and I had a gentleman's grudge, and in all honesty, so we basically ran those two big units at each other. He had a big unit.
I was about
of
to say, did you both just full send your?
I think that was literally
effectively. It was Longbeards and King versus Witches and Death Hag, and I did fly my executioners over the top to get them in the back, but I was fully expecting his King to one shot the Cauldron. Fully expecting. And yet when we reached that critical moment where I was like, I can still win this even if he does 7 wounds to my Cauldron, I'll win the combat, and then the witches can keep chewing through the unit, because I killed, 14 Longbeards in that sort of initial strike. The King rolled double ones on his 2d6s to wound. 2d6s of multiple wounds. He rolled double ones.
Using the rune of smite.
So
There's
Josh,
never been a greater tragedy.
Josh was that was one of those moments where I think we, and Michael was at the table as well. Michael, one of the tournament organizers, at the table as well, and we all sat there in utter disbelief, looking at this pair of dice. And from there, simply because of that, he couldn't get past the weight of combat res. He was doubled outnumbered and flanked. The unit auto broke. You can't use stubborn on the Longbeards. Oh, sorry, the Longbeards don't have stubborn. The King does, but the Longbeards don't have stubborn, which I thought was flabbergasting. They have shield wall, but he used his great weapons.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So, unfortunately, it ended up with that unit breaking, and that was the core of his army just gone. And from there, the witches chased down a couple of other units. The cold ones did the rest, and that was I think it was like an 18-4, that one, which he was then laughing at me because he was like, ha ha ha, you're going to go off on the top tables on the top bracket, and all the things that we were talking about before in terms of the types of lists that were present that were maybe not necessarily that fun against I would have to deal with. But I didn't end up having to do that. I then went and played Daniel, who was playing Empire, a pretty conventional Empire Grand Army list, a big block of Tutogen Guard with a Priest of Ulrich in it, a couple of War Machines, a couple of units of Knights, and a Steam Tank. And functionally what happened on a level 4 Pegasus with Elementalism to sort of giggle around. Effectively what happened was I set myself up in a perfect position to wipe up his backline. As you can see in I think that's turn 2. The witches are about to make a charge. The executioners are now there on the hill, about to charge side on into the Tutogen Guard. And 2 things happened. The executioners failed to charge, and failed to make it into the Tutogen Guard when it mattered. And then after 2 rounds of combat, the witches against the Tutogen Guard that I believe used their stubborn, the witches, after 2 rounds of combat, chewing through, I think there were maybe 6 tutoring guard left. The knights there down the bottom got in the side of the witch unit as well for all of that combat, which held the combat there for 2 turns until the steam tank came in. And on the turn the steam tank came in, I failed my ward save spell for the unit. And it
Classic.
disintegrated. So
Steam tanks are so good.
they're 265 points they'd want to be, but toughness 7 with 11 wounds and a 3+ armor save is very, very good.
Hard to shift,
but it was D6 +1 impact hits and D3 +1 stomps, I think, as well. But against toughness 3 with no save at all, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what it was. Frankly, it was just the unit went from being 25 models to being 6 models, I think, and there was no recovering from the combat res. So that was a break and flee, and then I just dispersed the rest of my army. So that was a narrow loss. I think that was a 9 to 13 maybe in his favor. But that was, again, when I was talking about the witches and sort of how they would go, that's exactly the sort of thing they're vulnerable to. It's not an invincible unit, and he did exactly the perfect thing for it. He held it, and he was able to hold it through a mixture of really good strategic planning and a little bit of luck. And then on the turn that it really counted, and the witches needed that ward save, they didn't get it, and that was what sealed their fate. So
what would you do in that kind of scenario if you managed to drop like a crystal column in front of the witches?
Well, ideally, my level 4 is sitting in the Executioners, so it's dispelling. So if you can see his Pegasus literally sitting next to the Executioners just out of arc. So I think he got off maybe 2 spells that entire game, because my level 4 managed to dispel everything. If he'd have managed to do it, if he'd have played slightly differently and sent his level 4 off, I was putting a lot of pressure on that flank. I did have the Doomfire Warlocks that are more than capable of dealing with a Wizard Lord on his own. On the other flank, I had the Cold One Knights. He was sort of quite pressured and pincered, so I don't think he was thinking about pushing his level 4 sort of out of range of the rest of his army. If he'd have done that, I don't know. There's not a lot that you can do with the Witch Block, and it's one of the drawbacks of running a big unit like that. But
did he have a double Hellblaster?
Yes.
I can see
double cannons.
Two
Double cannons.
Double cannons and a Hellblast. Yeah.
Double cannons and a Hellblaster. And I will say the dragged along rules, if Val ever sees this, the dragged along rules were very interesting as far as cannons go, because the ability of the Cauldron to effectively have a 5+ invul save where it passes the hit off to the unit, that was a huge benefit for any of the dragged along models. So I actually think it works much in the way that it should. It's not a particularly strong model on its own anyway, so it can easily get blasted apart. So it's very beneficial for it to have that sort of cover. But my third game was then against Alex Brown of the 2 Plus podcast, and by that point, we were both extremely frazzled. We basically lined everything up on one side of the board and went at one another. And for the second game of the day, I failed to roll up Arcane Urgency off 5 spells, which meant that the witches, once again, after John and Michael made the ruling that I can't steer to shadows them, the witches had no mobility, which meant that by the time they made combat, which is the combat they're about to go into just there, charging off the hill into the back of the Dragon Ogres, the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, the Spawn had both passed by through the Cold One Knights, and I wasn't able to catch them. And for anyone who's played Frenzy, you'd know that a Frenzied unit always has to overrun and it always has to pursue. Now, you can attempt to reform at the end of an overrun by making a leadership check. And the witches managed to stay on the board for their overrun. They didn't run off, but they failed the reform. And so having failed the reform, it meant that I had no opportunity. There were 3 turns left, I think, at that point.
Stuck.
To have to turn the witch block around and have them move off, to have to reform them and spend an entire turn moving them, just was never going to work to chase down his Herdstone or to chase down the Shaggoth. And I think they were only an inch or 2 at the end of the game, because I made that decision to try and catch the Shaggoth and the Spawn. But there was just no chance. But that said, the Death Hag herself did 10 wounds to a unit of Dragon Ogres. and then the witches themselves did the rest, and then they went straight into that chariot on the other side and melted that. So it was nice to see, you know, when they do touch things, the things usually die, particularly if they're those big chunky multi-wound models. But that ended up being the witches couldn't go anywhere. He took out the cold ones and the executioners. The executioners I really liked, but I actually think they need the extra AP banner that I had on the witches instead, because the strength 6 AP 1 sword just isn't enough. You need, like, they have cleaving blow, but that only works against standard sort of infantry and cavalry. It doesn't work against monstrous infantry and cavalry. And so because of that, going up against this list in particular just felt really, really weak, unfortunately, in terms of what they were able to do. That said, I mean, it was a fabulous game. We had some great moments, and then that ultimately led to the end of the day, which was me sprinting out of there to make sure that I got home in time to help out for bedtime. And Alex doing something very similar. We were running back and forth with boxes to the car and just passing each other on the way out. But
he did say in his video that you both told your respective wives that you'd be leaving at 5 p.m.
I had a great phone call at like 4:30 going, "Oh, how you going?" And I looked at the clock and there was an hour and a half still left on the clock. I was like,
we're just wrapping up.
There's this much time, and I got anyway. But all was well ultimately in the end, and I think we both managed to tidy things up. But it was a fabulous day. It was great. Daniel's a really fabulous guy. Josh obviously he's a beautiful human being. If anyone does get the opportunity to play Josh Phillips, like it's an absolute pleasure of a game anytime you do get to play. I think we've all played him.
Not me.
You haven't played him? Okay. No. Well, you'll enjoy it as much as the rest of us. He is an.
I've played him 3 times actually. He's probably the guy I've played the most.
And you've bullied him every time. How dare you?
Well, actually, no. We drew in the last round of Old Hammer 3.
There you go. Demons not invincible.
No, I was playing my Skin Wolves. And by the way, funny on the spells about not rolling up Arcane Urgency. I didn't roll up Infernal Gateway on the Great Unclean One once the entire day.
Yeah,
so,
but again,
all your practice games sort of hedged around that.
And here's something funny. Talking about cooked dice. So I'm rolling my spells against Matt.
Don't talk to us about cooked dice.
He can drop a comment in. And you know when you roll, and that's a duplicate. It's like, oh yeah, okay, it's a duplicate. I pick up one of the dice. And he goes, oh no, just do the logical thing would have been to say 1, 2, 3 is this, 4, 5, 6 is this. And I'm like, nah, man, I live for the randomness. Roll 5. Next one, roll 5. Next one, roll 1. These duplicates.
Never let Alex roll a single dice at a time. Never let Alex roll a single dice at a time. That's something we all learned playing 40k with him with Shadowfields. Never let him roll a single dice at a time. Make him roll a bunch of them all at once.
Put them
these
away.
Will forever be. These were the Shadowfield dice. Like he rolled 42 plus saves one at a time.
Bad. Don't invite Alex to your events. In essence, sorry.
Chris. You were happy with the witches?
Yeah, I mean, it did exactly what it should. And it's funny with what we're going to talk about with the match play rules and the version 1.5 rules around how everything is playing. The witch unit stays exactly the same. Yeah. So they lose an attack off Frenzy, but they get an attack off the reinforcing the second line of models. When they charge, they get the extra frenzy attack. When they don't charge, they get the extra rank. So they functionally don't change. It'll be interesting to see what sort of Val does and if the Renegades sort of makes any adjustment to Dark Elves or to any of the factions off the 1.5. I know he's doing some review at the moment, but the Witches, it's a fabulous unit. It's so thematic. It's 600 points. I will say that, but I mean, what we can talk about in the middle, it's a core unit. And it may potentially see another couple of rounds, but we'll see. Anyway, this give it one more click, Chris, because this list was Kane approved.
So you had warlocks and witches and the cauldron. And
It was a very
sorceress on
Haganeth.
Pegasus, yeah.
No, sorceress on foot. Sorceress on
on
foot.
foot.
With sorcerer on foot with the executioners, 2 units of Dark Riders, the Doomfire Warlocks, a big unit of 30 witches with the Death Hag, and the unit of Haganeth executioners.
That's
That
about
was
as
it.
thematic as it gets, really, which is good.
Can approved.
Yeah.
Can approve. And that really signals, is that the right word? It's definitely not the right word.
It's a good segue.
A good segue. But just to finish off, it's 12 months now since really the Old Hammer, the first Old Hammer event.
Yeah.
And the end of, let's call it season 1 of Warhammer the Old World Australia. Perfectly timed for what we're about to talk about.
Indeed. And I think it is worth, Alistair, you did say about how 1.5, in terms of how the FAQ has affected things. We're not going to be talking about the FAQ today because there's so much in it. We might do another video at some point, but I think we can just sort of reference some of the major changes. A lot of the other content creators have done a lot of the FAQ breakdowns, so I think they're really worth checking out if you want a simplified version. It's 17 pages now, the FAQ, which is monstrous. And it's almost not worth reading your rule book anymore, really. But I will say, Alex and I played a game on TTS. We used the match play guide and we used the 1.5 changes from the FAQ. Completely different game, and it functions beautifully. I think the changes are fantastic. They're substantial, they're significant. It does feel like you're doing something different, and it will take a long time, I'd say, to really nut out exactly what's going on and what the impacts are. And that's really exciting. Caveat, it's gotten more exciting with the way that objectives now function and the way that infantry's been buffed and the way that core units are present and must be present in, well, what we would say must be present in your rosters. So, as we alluded to at the beginning, you go.
I was just going to say, you should preface, really, when we're talking about this conversation, we're talking about, we normally do this, setting up for Old Hammer events, etc. Like when we play our TTS games, we play as if we're at a tournament. We've got a game, we've got objectives, we're using the map deployments, etc.
Exactly. Exactly. Excuse me, I'm getting a little husky, which people might like. So what I think we should say is, as Alex just said, yes, this will probably be very prominent and prevalent within our Sydney group, which is quite big. So the match play guide will hopefully be everything. And if you click over to the next slide, Chris, basically I just wanted to start by going through some of the objectives, and then we will go into the missions. And I think the objectives, the secondary objectives and the common objectives, are going to really frame how you should approach list building. And it's really, really cool. I mean, we've seen the common objectives here. They haven't really changed. The big change, though, is that you now get percentage of victory points from things that you kill. So we've all had a lot of games where, you've had a Greater Demon of Khorne or a Dragon escape on 1 wound. Previously, that would...
You got to get over that.
Previously, that would net you or save you the entire points worth of that model. And that's a big 700, 600, whatever it is, group of points. Now, if you get them down to 25%, not less than, but at 25%, then you're always getting 50% of the value. And that is a huge change in itself.
It is a good change.
It applies to all units. So it's just really, really good.
I think a couple of TOs and a couple of events had done various takes on this. Some of them had done just for the monsters and behemoths, you get a certain percentage of points. Others went for whole units, a certain percentage.
50%.
Yeah, so it's good to see that it's kind of been rolled out into the official.
Exactly, official, yeah. And then you've got the King is Dead, of course. Killing a general gets you 100 VPs, and then Trophies of War, which is the standards and the BSBs, right? So we can go on to the next slide. So they're the common objectives. They always apply, which is really cool. So you're always going to be able to get points from a lot more things. So let's hit the secondaries.
Yep.
It hasn't. Oh, okay. It hasn't appeared on my screen. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So these are the really, really cool ways to play. And so the first thing that we see is a baggage train. Now, what I've tried to do in all of these slides is really deduce the main points. There's a lot of text in the match play guide, and I've just tried to get rid of them. So baggage trains are, each player gets one sort of 60 by 100 millimeter base. They wholly place that within their deployment zone, not overlapping any terrain feature or anything similar. And there's obviously some placement restrictions, like you can't place it within 3 inches of a battlefield edge. But this is where we start seeing unit strength of things becoming the theme is very important. Now, baggage train is unique in that it doesn't require you to be anything else other than 10 unit strength. But you can't be fleeing. You can't be subject to stupidity, which is really cool for some of the spells now that we've seen. Like the Cafe can apply some stupidity spells. I think the demons also have a stupidity spell, which Alex, you've identified.
Well, yeah, Slanesh demons have one that not only makes you stupid, but it removes your buffs. But Illusion also has one to give you stupidity. So I think, we'll go into it.
Yeah. So basically, you need to be unit strength 10 or more to control, and then you can actually destroy your opponent's baggage as well, in which you need to be unit strength 5 or more. And then if you hold it by the start of your next turn and you're still unit strength 5 and you're not in combat, then you can destroy it, which nets you 250 victory points. So that is a huge amount of points, which is up for grabs. 350 victory points by destroying your opponents and by controlling your own is a massive swing, potentially.
Can you charge it?
You just have to be in base contact with it.
Yeah,
you just have to touch it.
You can't charge it.
Well, you can't charge it. No.
I think you just move into combat. You have to march into combat.
Yeah. So basically, it's going to start formulating. If you see a mission pack that sees a lot of baggage train use, you're probably going to want fast-moving little durable units like mounted characters. Bretonnians are going to be really good for this. Even your mounted ogres are going to be pretty good for this because they're fast, they're durable, they pack a lot of points themselves, and they're not going to be able to be caught by, enemy units. The caveat there will be, though, you can't be in combat when you are trying to destroy the baggage train. So the larger your base, potentially the more catchable you are. So it's going to be a really interesting objective. And I'll be really interested to see how, the Western Sydney Wargamers implement it. And it's also a really nice hobby opportunity too. I've already got some ideas as to how I want to represent my 60 by 100 millimeter feature. I'm thinking the Great Moorpot, the official GW model. And I think, Chris, you were talking about Greasus Goldtooth, who's the king of the ogres in sort of before the end times, which is a really cool modeling opportunity there as well.
He's too fat to move, so he's.
I will showcase my model.
Oh, how exciting!
But, in the next podcast, because I think it's 24 inches high.
24 inches
high, yes.
Obscene.
So this and another mission called Domination are the two showcases where you don't have to be core. It's just about unit strength. But everything else, it's really worth noting, you have to be core. And that is a massive, massive, massive change that we see from this mission pack. So let's go into Domination. Basically, we've seen sort of similar takes on this before. You quarter the battlefield. Every unit strength of every model that's wholly within a quarter goes towards your tally, right? And the player with the highest unit strength in a quarter will win. Now, that's pretty standard. I think we've had analogs to this in other mission packs. I think the Western Sydney Wargamers were doing this for quite a while, in at least one or two of their missions.
Stuff, I think.
Yeah, with banners. But now you just basically tally everything that's up in a quarter, and you can get up to 200 victory points per quarter, which is quite substantial. And it really means that you're going to want to, not have maybe all your eggs in one basket, and you might want multiple cheap, high unit strength units that can sort of spread around. And Alex, I mean, you demonstrated, and you alluded to at the beginning of your game, at the beginning of this episode, spells like Steed of Shadows and Arcane Urgency, that can hop a large unit strength unit into a quarter and just remain there are going to be quite pivotal, I would say.
Absolutely. And, we played this in our practice game as well. And if you think about the fact that when we look at some of these things, like in the Western Sydney Wargamers pack, this was the objective. But this is, again, a secondary objective. There could be it could be baggage train and this as well.
So you can
right?
have more than one secondary.
That's
ambition.
right.
You
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
That's
Which
good.
we'll go into as well. But this one lends itself to, probably more to shooting armies, like control sectors, move, fast-moving threats, etc. But it's hard, right? Because you still got to go kill your opponent's army that's coming down on you. So, Tom, in our game, we had that basically where two greater demons were alive in a table quarter with your iron guts, but you actually won the table quarter because you had 3 more unit strength than
Exactly.
they could. Yeah.
Yeah, the ogres. I mean, the ogres, we keep joking, is it ogre? Because a lot of the FAQ changes haven't really affected Ogre Kingdom's special rules. But I feel like, Alex has been almost flogging this dead horse for a long time. But you've always been saying that Noblars are a bit of a vibe. And Noblars might actually be quite the vibe now. As we'll see, but
Just cheap scoring, right?
Exactly.
Cheap scoring, and the other
that
one,
are core.
yeah, and undead demons, immune to psychology, scoring units, which are just like you have to come and get to me. Like in our game, I had to use multiple turns of the summoning to kill your 40-point Noblars.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Well, it's.
So let's.
I mean,
You go.
it does. Sorry, it just does. It poses some really interesting questions around list construction because, particularly in the environment that we exist in, where 3D printing is a really easy source of, excuse me, a really easy source of new models. I mean, controversy around the most recent Old Hammer aside with proxies, but I think it's not inconceivable now for many armies that have access to core units that can be 20 models strong and have 2 to 4 point models in those units, suddenly bringing along at least 3 of those. I mean, Noblars are
Zombies.
2 points per model. Tom?
Noblars are 2. The trappers are 5, but
Yeah.
4. But the normal
But
nobs are 2.
does that come with light armor and a shield, or are they just naked?
Just naked.
Just
But
naked.
they do have throwing
Even
weapons.
still,
But
20 wounds that, hypothetically someone has to chew through. You're either accommodating for that, because that's only 120 points, right? For your entire list.
Yeah.
It's less than 3 ogres. So if your opponent's not accommodating for having to deal with a massive scoring chaff unit, plus the rest of your army, they're going to be in serious trouble. And you won't necessarily be able to take the sort of hyper elite or even multiple small units structures that we've seen before in an instance
If
where this becomes.
you want to pay attention to the objectives, and if you find them important, and I think that they
This
will
is
be
true.
important. But I think, what you were alluding to there, Alistair, is that, it sort of feels like maybe gone are the days where you can just bring 5 units of 5 Illyrian Reavers and run around the table, because as soon as one of them gets knocked off, they're no longer a scoring unit. And they might count for things like domination, which is fantastic, but they won't be core. So let's hop into the core aspect of things, of the secondary objectives.
On the quarter one in particular, I'm curious to see the dwarf list going forward, because I know Alex ran a certain style of dwarf list, which was, I mean, let's be honest, it was 3 units?
Yes.
It's basically, I'm going to park here in the corner and not die, and you're going to have to come at me, and hopefully I kill you.
Yeah, a melee
I don't think you can
unit,
have
a
that.
ranged unit, and a chariot. Yeah.
Funny enough, talking about Josh before, his list, he could literally run the same list, and he's gone up.
Oh yes, and
three
it's
grades.
substantially
Like
so with the 1.5 changes, dwarves feel extremely good.
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on, Tom.
We'll get to that. We'll get to it.
Well, the caveat there is also that Linehammer, you should note, has substantially changed. But have a look at some other content creators for the FAQ breakdowns. But it's all movement based now, so you can't have like a line of 20 and have all of them attacking. So the dwarf structure, in terms of what was successful quite often, has changed a bit. But it'll be really
arguably,
interesting to say.
the fight in extra rank has
has
given you that same
caveated
thing.
that. Yeah. So this is where we start seeing core units. So you can see that I've, in the controlled by section for our visual audience, any core unit with unit strength 10 or more within 6 inches of a special feature, which is just the center of the board, essentially, will control it. And if you control that at the end of the game, you get 200 victory points. So a lot, and this is where you start seeing, your multiple chaff units of core plus your big sort of main core unit. For Alistair, that might be the witches with the cauldron. It doesn't matter about the amount of points that are in the unit, but it does matter about the unit strength. Again, it's going to be the closest unit that wins it. If you're equidistant, i.e. you're both touching the special feature, which will probably be quite common, and you're playing over the the give ground mechanics in combat, then closest wins, which makes give ground and Fabigo really, really important. And we had multiple instances in our practice game, Alex, where if you fail to restrain and you pursue too far, you actually start losing some of these scoring capacities, which is really interesting for the flow of the game too. And I do want to note that all of the objectives that we've seen so far have been end of the game scoring, but there are also consecutive turn scoring, which we'll see next.
I'm curious with this one that
Yep.
because it's unit strength 10 at the end of the game, and I'm wondering if some armies are going to set up in such a way, because I played a Lizardman player that did this, where he held his Saurus, because he had to take Saurus, off to the sides, turns 1, 2, and 3, and then at the end of the game, that's when they finally came in. So because you need to be, because like, let's say you take a unit of like 30, I don't know, Empire Halberdiers, right? Are they going to be 10 at the end of the game if they've been fighting the whole time? Like, it's a bit dubious. Maybe you sweep the hill or whatever feature it is with your other units, drive your opponent back, and then you just park a unit of like 20 guys on top and just hold out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. We found in our practice game, it was a brawl. Yeah. It was an absolute brawl, and we were more focused on the next objective, which we'll go into. But just to note here, this is actually the lowest scoring end of game. Well, total wise, it's only 200.
Yeah, so there's two things to bear in mind for that, Chris. It's a really good point, but it's not dissimilar to what we've already seen with the last old hammer. So with the unit structures, with the mission structures there being specifically about control of table quarters with units with banners, with them being in deployment zone, with them outnumbering your opponent. It's not dissimilar to a lot of the strategies that we already saw there. But the biggest difference, the most fundamental difference, which I'm sure Tom and Alex are going to talk about in a second, is progressive scoring.
And probably also the fact that you have to be the closest unit, right? So we're talking, if one is touching and one's an inch away, you might have 100 unit strength and I've got 10, but my unit's touching, closest. So I still get it, right? And that makes it a lot more dynamic and makes your combat resolution a lot more important. But it also means that pinging that last wound, as you've said, Chris, to bring it down underneath a core unit strength of 10, that's really important. And I feel like it's almost a necessary encouragement to more gunline style rosters as well. Like a really good source of magic missile. Cathay might be really good at this, for example. Or, a lot of crossbows or ranged shooting like in Dwarves or in Empire, because the ability to just sort of neuter any of these multiple scoring units, like you might have the Illyrian Reaver example, that'll be really, really important. And it's just like, okay, well, what do I do with this unit now? It's almost encouraging you to really bring a bigger unit that's really elite, or like sort of really cheap, larger units. And it's going to really, I think, have that footprint impact. And it might push us back into the notion of large blocks of infantry, which I think a lot of people have wanted to see from the start of the game, right?
Does the match play guide for this specify how many special features?
It does. We'll get into that. The special feature is just one. So as you can see, the terrain feature, it's no wider than 6 inches, and it has to be placed in the center of the battlefield, right? Domination is the table quarters, and the baggage train is within your deployment zone. But we'll go on to the next one, which is the big one. Strategic locations. Now, of the 6 missions, I think 3 or 4 of them mandate the use of strategic locations. So they're going to be very, very, very common. And these are really cool. And you can see that I've got 2, 3, and 4 on the right-hand side of the screen here. And these are how you set them up. So they're very different, right? You've almost got like a baggage train-esque strategic location in 2. You've got to basically like hold the center in 3, and then you've got 4 objectives in 4 that you're going to be fighting over. And really, the aim of the game is to going to be at least in 3 and 4 breaking even, right? You want to make sure that you're holding 3 of the 4 or 2 of the 3 to try and outstrip your opponent. Now, before we get into the actual breakdown of the scoring, it's really important to note that each player scores at the end of a player's turn, right? Mm-hmm. So if Alex ends his turn with 2 of the 3, he'll get 2 points of 30 or 2 times 30, and I'll still get 1 times 30. And that's a consecutive rolling scoring mechanic. So it can really outweigh very, very quickly if you're not paying attention to it. Sure, it's only 30 victory points, right? But it doesn't really matter. Because 30 victory points added up over 12 instances of potential scoring, that's a lot of points. That's a lot of points.
Going first matters now because, as you said, large blocks of immovable. I can just envision it talking about dwarves, Chris, big block of dwarves, land on the objective, and they become immovable in many ways, or whatever context you want to have. Because we found, Tom, literally, depending on the deployment map, you're scoring like bang. There's no. Okay, we'll get there to turn 3, 4. It's turn 1. You're on
from go. You're from the go.
Jade Lancers jumping up on that mid objective because they're core, right? Core cavalry. Any core cavalry units.
Any core cavalry.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I think anything with countercharge is insane now,
I think
because
scout
scout, but
huge.
you can move them up with countercharge and say, yep, you can charge me, but I'm going to come to you. And even if you win, I'm going to come back, but I might not. To your point, Tom, like even with the Fabago or the give ground, if you're literally on top of the objective.
Exactly.
Just a question with the range. So I'm seeing there it's saying they're 40 millimeter round base dioramas, which is pretty common for GW games. But it says a core unit within 6 inches. Is that within 6 inches of any part of that base or the center?
Well, I mean, it's
of any part.
Any part, yeah. Okay. But if you're like directly on top, because keep in mind that battlefield decorations are actually a subsection of the rulebook, so you can stand on top of them. They're completely ignored for all other purposes, but they do obscure line of sight. So that's important to note. So they kind of add a little cover, which is really cool. But yeah, the most recent FAQ, the one before the 1.5 changes, a lot of people were lamenting the scout changes, right? Because it meant that if you deploy last, it punishes you for that first turn roll off. Now, scout really, especially on a core unit, allows you to get a huge jump in points, and I think that that's really done away with a lot of the detriment.
Even from a denial standpoint, Scout is now massive. Scout and Vanguard are going to have enormous impacts in terms of what's available. In fact, any of the unique deployments, even ambushes has a totally different meaning now than it did with the objective structures in place. Part of me sort of worries that we'll end up in this 40k-esque environment where shooting becomes obviously a huge amount more important, but there feels like there's enough from a redundancy standpoint in terms of its core units, because correct me if I'm wrong, but for these specifically, only core can control.
That's right.
Only core.
So even if you park another unit on top of it, you cannot count as controlling it. You cannot score off it. So
that's right.
It really does feel that there's an enormous emphasis now on revisiting the core, forgive the pun, the core essentials of every army, and understanding what is going to be the best in an environment where progressive scoring is now going to be a really core fundamental way of gathering victory points. And then off the back of that, understanding objective control. specifically, particularly
That's
with
right.
Magic changes now and Magic not being quite so easy to use anymore.
Yep. Absolutely. And there's a couple of pointers there. Like Crystal Column is now insane. It's hard to get off, but it's incredibly hard to now dispel. Even with your level 4, dispelling at +2, it's like a 1 in 4 chance of dispelling it. So you park that in front of something that you don't want to score or get to the scoring, that's there. But, I mean, Tom, in our game, I feel like 2 things really came out of it. One was we were actively discussing scoring, like
Yeah.
all the time. Less so about, I'm going to kill this, I'm going to kill that. And secondly, tracking of scoring is going to need to be really tight, really
Yeah.
tight. I mean, we used in TTS like literal just poker chips, and we had them lined up, and every time it's like, yep, I'll take one, and that might be where we get to, right? Is I don't know. Michael goes and orders 1,000 poker chips from Temu for like $5 or something, and that's literally how you're tracking it one by one. Because I can already see it now, right? You're in the game. Oh my gosh, we forgot to score your turn, Chris. How many did you have? Where's that? We missed that scoring, etc. So
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's funny with us running the event at the end of the month and I suppose the game support that I've already been designing for those missions, including one progressive scoring mission, which I will call myself Nostradamus because I predicted the future. But one progressive scoring mission that we included before this match play book came out. But I've been really conscious because, of course, when we used to run events that had progressive scoring structures, you always had to be really careful about how you presented the players with a piece of paper or a scoring sheet or something to enable them to make sure that they're tracking over the course of the game. So it's interesting to me, I suppose, part of the match play book that they haven't offered that style of collateral support as part of the sort of mission pack to say, here's an example scoring sheet of how you can do it. That said, I'm sure there's going to be 100 around really shortly, probably starting with our own. So I mean,
sure.
it'll be really interesting to see.
And
can I say something crazy? I think that this secondary, I mean, given the fact that it's so widespread in the missions that are required in the mission pack, I feel like it almost allows and this might be a horrendous take, but I feel like it almost allows a far more thematic line for hobbyists to take, right? Because, I mean, Alistair, you were talking about some of your proposed rosters. Mounted Nuln, mounted Knightly Orders, things with slightly higher durability that are 7-man cav units or 8-man cav units that get a benefit for being a complete Knightly Order or something similar. Noblars, Wood Elf, whatever you want, like you just have to upscale a little bit more. And I think that's really cool. Lizardmen now, building around Temple Guard and Saurus Warriors, that's a viable thing because they're really hard to shift. And they've also got all the infantry buffs too.
Yeah, it's certainly really interesting to me that obviously these things were designed, so 1.5 and the match play guide were designed to work in concert, right? They're designed to shift the way that the game is played, but
just not for ogres.
Just not for ogres. But to your point specifically, I mean, yes, you guys have been very patient as I've just vomited list after list and gone, this could work now, this could work now, this could work now. Things in my wildest dreams a couple of weeks ago, I never would have gone, this is viable. And one of the reasons why I didn't bring, apart from Renegades sort of coming out, but one of the reasons why I didn't bring White Wolves to the last Oldhammer was specifically around 0 magic defense means in an environment with level 4s rolling around having total dominance and control over the game, it's really unpleasant to play against. But now Empire specifically, and I'm sure people have already started talking about this, the Witch Hunter's Ward, the 20-point magic resist 2 item, huge.
I mean, Brazen Call is the same on Chaos, right? Yeah. Anything that's extremely common magic resist.
Demons are broken, man.
Or dispel
Chaos Warriors, thank you.
Dispel items are the same, or +1 to cast items. Anything that influences is now with that. But to the point around objectives. No, we're not. Yeah. But to the point around objectives. There's now with all the arcane journals out, now with the way that this set of match play rules are structured, and the way that people are now, I think people can go back and revisit those Arcane Journal army lists and see whether there's real opportunities to bring previously undervalued core units that are super thematic and really bring all of those armies to life in really interesting and quirky ways. I think it's introduced this level of randomness now to the game, which I'm sure will evaporate, right? Like we all kind of felt this way at launch, where it was just like, oh, it's great, and there's this and there's that, and I'm sure we'll see, variations of the Night Goblin poison block or the Tomb Kings infinitely regenerating
100 zombies.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. But that aside, it's still super exciting to have this.
Definitely.
this
and just
play.
remember,
now,
the unit strength real quick is super important, right? 100 zombies will get you real far, but it's closest to the objective, right?
So if you can
make them for by
and
go,
stay on top of that,
or if you make them give ground, or they don't have enough movement to get there, your 10-man unit can still push them off, and that's a huge balancing factor. So it might feel real bad, but there's game there, all you have to do is a cheeky give ground.
I think the most exciting thing for me about this, coupled with the other things, is actually more interesting deployments. Because right now, and I'm not going to call out Wood Elf players specifically, but some armies will just park in a corner and just go, you're going to have to come to me. We're going to have to fight with all of my army arrayed in whatever formation I deem the best. Now it's like, oh, let's say I'm playing that fourth setup with the box of objectives. Do I send my dragon up the left flank, and he's just going to clear that objective, and then a unit strength 10 unit is just going to come up behind him and sit on that objective?
Exactly.
Am I going to send my cavalry down the other flank and try and again sweep the objective? Like, there's a whole bunch of interesting flank deployments and mini games now. It's good.
It's like little skirmishes now. So just before we move on to the missions, I thought, these summaries are really for us and for the viewers. And instead of trying to go through line by line, I've just tried to summarize. And then down the bottom, I put very, very simple notes. Okay. So I've then taken those secondary objectives and then put the notes from those secondary objectives to any applicable missions where they are optional, right? So that's why I thought we would go through the common and the secondaries first, and now we'll go into the missions just for a little bit more contextualization.
Rapid fire through.
Exactly.
Not that it's going to make that much of a difference, but I'll drop this in while we can. Our patrons will receive a copy of Tom's descriptions very shortly after the publication of this episode. There you go, Tom.
Or you can just screenshot if you'd like.
Or you can just screenshot stuff as you go.
Just remember, I am studying a law degree, and I will come after you.
Tom needs cold hard cash. So if you'd like to continue to support us, this is one of the wonderful perks that we can offer you. Our analysis, our in-depth architectural, learned analysis of everything that's going on. But anyway, carry on, and let's keep this at pace because we're an hour in now, and I think we spent the last
so this won't be verbatim
talking about 2 slides.
Exactly. So we've gone. Mission 1 is upon the field of glory. It's basically open battle. You don't have any special caveats. Every secondary objective is optional. So baggage train, domination, special features, strategic location. This is your sort of
Vanilla.
all-comers vanilla mission that your tournament organizers can decide what they want. You can see I put the notes for every different, secondary on the left there, and you've just got a very standard run at each other type of deployment. Boring, but you can have you can have all 4 of these secondary objectives if you'd like, which is crazy.
Exciting. But want to quickly talk about the turn limit?
Oh yeah. Also, I think this would probably be pretty standard. Every tournament organizer is likely going to do 6 turns. 5 or 6 turns, I'd say. And so we've just assumed that the other ones, like random game length and breaking point, aren't going to apply. We're not even going to talk about them. And that is also flagging something that will come up later, which I wanted to talk about now, but Alistair wants to talk about later. It's a little bit of a goof. But yeah, let's move on to mission number 2, because this has the potential, number 1 can be super boring, but it can also just run all 4 and just throw caution to the wind, I guess. This is mission 2, which is King of the Hill. And this is in addition to all of your secondary potential scoring. you also must control the hill. So this is instead of a 6-inch control bubble, now it's a 9-inch control bubble, and you also need to be core, and it's at the end of each turn. But at the end of each turn, you score 100 victory points, which is huge, right? So this is where you see those units like Alistair's big witches or my big Gutstar or potentially those 100 zombies. But remember, its closest unit wins, right? And you can't be fleeing or subject to stupidity. So those spells come in really handy, and anything that might push really low leadership units off an objective, like my Noblars or something, are incredibly important, right?
Yeah.
So this is really
1,200
cool.
points. 1,200 points for controlling the hill the whole game.
Hang on, it's end of turn, not end of play round.
It's
right?
every player turn.
Well,
It's every player turn.
Well, okay, then let's be more specific with our notes then, and then just make sure that
Round
saying,
and turn.
I was going to say, because like a special feature, it's 200 victory points at the end of the game, right?
That's right.
So
to be fair, this is the primary mission.
Yeah, so it counts as like one round of holding the hill, basically.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've noticed in bold, no vanguards.
No vanguard moves here, so you can't just jump in, but you can scout.
I think this is going to be a popular one. My prophetic prediction will be this will be in the old Hammer pack.
I think it would be really cool. You know, you can run this with strategic locations. This you can't use strategic locations
baggage
here.
Or special feature.
Just baggage or special features. So that could be really fun. Special features would be an odd choice because you'd have the special feature and the hill both doing the same thing. So I'd say this would probably be used in tandem with just baggage train, and that would be really fun.
Special feature, is the special feature impassable? Is it like a piece of terrain, the special feature, or is it, because it said it can't be more than 6 inches across? Is it a piece of terrain?
It is a piece of terrain.
So the only way that I could see this envisioned as hill and special feature is if you stick a tower in the middle, and the whole idea of doing that is stopping one unit from just sitting on top.
Yeah.
Because then you have to sort of fight around the outsides.
Yeah, but I guess one point is this: the way that this is written is you don't have to be on the hill. You have to be within 9 of the center of the board. So you could have the hill or tower or whatever you want as the special feature in the middle, being whatever size it has to be. But when you're scoring control the hill, it's your unit within 9 of the center.
Yeah, it's an 18-inch. It's an 18-inch diameter, so that's a lot of space for one unit to cover to make sure that nothing else can get in there.
Huge.
Yeah, yes.
The special feature has to be in the center.
It does.
Has to be right smack. So I agree, Tom. I think it would be odd to play, unless it's a really thematic mission like the Wizard's Tower or something like that. We're running up the hill to get it. I think it's going to be baggage train.
Yeah, and I think baggage train is really cool. But you've got mission number 2 here out of the 5 that we're going to present. 2 is core, so we need to think about that already, right? So let's go on to number 3, drawn battle lines. Now here you must use strategic locations, 3, right? So already we've got 2 of the 3 that we've already presented being core mandatory, and this is where you also score at the end of each player turn for 30 points. So you're getting potentially 90 points at the end of each player turn if you dominate those objectives, which can really swing. This is where you also have like a reserves component, but they've really reduced the feels bad occurrence of one player rolling multiple ones and inevitably reserving half their force. If either player rolls a 1 at the beginning of the game, they just reserve 1 infantry or cavalry unit each, and that's it. That's where it stops. So we're both in it, or neither of us are in it. And this is the objective Alex and I played in our practice game, and it was so much fun.
I've got the scores here.
It's before you get into that. It's a really odd deployment type. So this is
scoring straight away.
This is the Vanguard. This is the Vanguard deployment, but with a 24-inch gap instead of the traditional 18 or 12-inch gap that
Yep.
that has
You're really
previously
far
been in
away.
place. You're very far away from it. It's quite a small deployment zone. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be really hard to manage, but it's not, because you measure 24 from one side, 24 from the other, and then you just draw your straight lines to the corner of the board,
That's right.
which is really good from a setup standpoint. But my goodness, we haven't seen this deployment type before.
So
No,
I'd like
this is to your point, Chris.
Yeah.
This is like you're saying, do you score straight away? Literally, when you overlay the objectives, you can have
it
units
lines
in
up.
your deployment
Yeah,
zone.
okay.
Yeah.
If I can just go on a minor GW rant about deployment maps, because they do this in every single one of their fucking game systems, and I'm so over it. I understand, Alistair, you just explained a really simple way of how to measure out that deployment zone. Can we please, if we have a standard battle size that we've already picked, right? 6x4 in AOS and 40k, it's something else. If you're going to draw me a map that has a funky deployment zone, draw out the measurements for that deployment zone as if it was a 6x4. If I want to go out and play a 3x3 game, I'll do the calculations myself. But I'm so over, particularly in AOS, so over getting these funky deployment maps, and they just give you the most vague line to be like, oh, it's roughly there. You'll figure it out. It's like, oh, I have to figure it out every single time I play this mission. Why don't you just give me the measurements? Anyway, done.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Rant over.
So Alex and I played this, excuse me, as our practice. I rolled randomly for the mission, and then we must use strategic location, and then I rolled randomly for either baggage or domination. And we were playing this on domination as well, which made it really, really cool. And there was just so much going on, and it really made us think about how we would make changes to the lists that we brought to that game. And just keep in mind that we'd already made the lists before we wrote. We already made the lists before we rolled for the mission. So we weren't tailoring to try and maximize what we could get here. Whereas you would be able to do that, had you been given an event pack. But yeah, give us the score breakdown, Alex.
Well, to not bore people on specifics, but effectively 36% of your score was secondaries and 30% of mine was secondaries. We ended in a draw. And even though I had 234 more, 320 more kill points than you had more secondaries. So we ended this differential, and we'll talk about it later on about the new scoring. But in GWs, that's a draw. But the point here is that a 30 to 40% score in the secondaries can't be ignored. And I see a lot of people online talking about, don't worry about it. We'll just kill, etc. And yes, I'm sure you can do that, but I just think in the new world where we move to units where stubborn and shield wall are going to become so essential, everyone's going to have a battle standard bearer. I mean, everybody is going to have a battle standard bearer now.
Or like veteran or something similar.
Exactly. And you had an interesting point on that too. But coming back to it, it was literally the late stage of the game. It wasn't my bloodthirster trying to chase down the final kill. It was, how do I remove a scoring unit from that table quarter so that he can score, etc. And we had a hilarious moment where both of my greater demons won combat against your Iron Guts, and I rolled double one. Oh no, a 1 and a 2 on the bloodthirster. He went 3 inches, and the Lord of Change rolled triple 1. And I needed 4.
And that kept me in the draw.
Domination was, you have to be wholly within the quarter, right?
Yeah.
Wholly
That's
within
going to
the
be
quarter,
interesting.
and you don't have to be core.
It's interesting to have that on this kind of objective layout, because it means that maybe there's a little bit of a dance where you're just slowly inching towards there, but it's trying to stay in the quarters.
Well, then you have to make the call. Is the domination is worth more?
They're pushing you off the
scoring. 30 victory point. Yeah.
And that happened with your Mournfang at the end, where it was like there was literally no point from turn 4 onwards them trying to turn about face and try and kill a
White
greater
units,
demon.
exactly.
When it's like, just go and get an uncontested table quarter for 150 points.
Yeah. It was really interesting way to play. And what we were talking about in terms of sitting on top of an objective, that, as you've just said, Chris, will eliminate your ability largely to cap a table quarter for domination. So you've got to be really careful about where you put things. It's really interesting.
It's good.
For those of you at home, take a deep breath and a sigh of relief. The police are not coming for Tom yet.
Not yet.
Let's move on to scenario 4.
Sure.
So here, it's not up on my screen yet.
So it's close quarters. You must use strategic locations 2, which is down the middle. You may use domination.
Yeah.
The deployments are slightly tucked in. Otherwise, it's basically the standard deployment.
Standard deployment.
Yeah.
I think this will probably not make a huge feature, just because it's quite samey as your more flexible mission 1. But it'll be interesting. It's very similar to just a mission 1, but with less objectives.
I'd be interested to see whether this would be included more than standard scenario 1. And the reason that I say that is that the short battlefield edges being impassable. So it's like Battle for the Past, right? Like it's that sort of thing again. But that says some really interesting things around how units will maybe peel off, how they will combat, what sort of units you can take to be effective, knowing that you can't be forced to pursue off a table edge, or you can't seek refuge by pursuing off a table edge. I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, it might be more fun than mission 1. I guess you just can't have the same lot of the flex. But yeah, it's basically a port. We've seen it before. So let's go on to the next one. This is Alistair's idea of a joke. Why is this slide blank, Tom? Well, let me tell you. So we've seen at the top left, we've said assume fixed turn limit. If you look at the actual mission, this is designed to play on breaking point or random game length. And then the deployment zones are also a little strange as well, right? So there's a little bit more variation. I don't think it's necessarily been designed as a tournament mission, just by virtue of the mission description. That's why I just haven't bothered talking about it. But if you want to check it out, have a look.
I will say
I could be super wrong.
Random game length, because we played Shatterpoint, and that does have random game length. It's got like a mission critical mechanic. The interesting thing is, in a tournament, the TO will go off and roll dice to determine the remaining time in the round. But that applies to every table. So
interesting.
When you have random mission lengths, like let's say I'm a TO and I'm running this mission 5 in an event, you really got to think, am I doing random mission length for every single table individually, or am I doing it one random for all of the tables?
Yeah, it's so difficult to control though. In a you've got a fixed time limit, and we had the experience at the last Old Hammer where again all of us were very much going, this is the longest Old Hammer that we'd ever been to. And I think a consequence of that was Alex going over time in every single one of his games. But I think so it's
I think dice rolling.
I apologize.
I think there's an emphasis to be made on timely play, and I don't think variable turn limits in an event in a game style or event style like we've seen sort of been constructed about the old world. Not sure whether it has a place. But let's move on to scenario 6.
I'll also talk about that because I play Lord of the Rings and it doesn't have a set turn limit. It is random, but basically a condition is met, and I assume Breakpoint is similar to this. You get to a certain amount of kills against your enemy, then you start some missions. You start rolling to see if the game ends. I have been on the receiving end of I'm crushing this game. I'm doing so well, and then the game continues for another 12 turns. Turns are a lot faster in Lord of the Rings, and you end up losing just because of one dice roll that just goes, no, you keep playing.
Yeah.
So it's not great.
No. Yep. So let's just skip it, shall we?
I have done something a bit. Oh no, it hasn't showed up. It hasn't showed up.
Oh, hang on.
What have you done?
I did want to say just quickly on that mission.
Just gonna quickly.
It's the new mission where there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
The only quick point I wanted to say here is it's actually the first mission where picking, winning the roll off actually matters because you can control which deployment quarter you're going into. And if we're using the square-based preset terrain, most of the other maps it's symmetrical.
Yeah.
This is the only mission in the pack if you're of that approach where you actually get to pick.
Yeah,
It's all about the hand motion.
it is. No, you're a very visual communicator.
Visual
and I love it. Yeah, I just think that, and maybe I'm wrong, and this is also nice because it gets rid of the 9-inch, or it gets rid of the turn 1 scoring ability should you use a special location in the center, but we'll see. I just don't think that it'll be. I could be wrong, and maybe you just make changes. But if we're just going straight from the book, I reckon leave this one aside for a second. Let's go to number 6. So this is, I mean, kind of cool. It's just the mission 1, but hey, you've lost 12 inches of deployment. The thing that's cool about this, though, is that you must use strategic locations 4, right? So you're ramping up those objectives. It must be core again. So of the 5 missions we've talked about, 4 of them must use core scoring, right? And this is why it's so important, I think, to build your rosters accordingly with core in them, right? And durable core, because if you're just bringing unit strength 10, pinging 1 loses you the ability to score. And that's a huge, huge detriment. You can hinge or hedge your bets on going for baggage train. That's fantastic if they use it, right? But if they're not using baggage train, and if you can't get to baggage train, then the only way that you're scoring is via killing, and potentially 120 victory points per player turn. And that's a huge difference.
Now, Tom, would you say that if you had an army, let's say, now none of us have thought about this, of course, where you had
This is unscripted.
mounted troops with a high armor save, high weapon skill, counter charge, magic resist 2, cheap, etc.
Good shooting.
Talking
it's
about
not coming
no
to me.
one
It's not coming to
specifically.
me.
It doesn't start with the E, does it? It's a
No.
no.
I'm not sure.
No.
Okay.
Is it O?
I'm not
Is it
sure.
O?
Inner Circle Knights
It's
is
definitely
core.
not
I don't know.
ogres.
Is that a thing?
No, I don't know. Who knows?
Is that a thing?
No.
But I think there's a lot of play for a lot of these sort of unusual factions. And as I said before, using Saurus Warriors or Temple Guard now are really cool. My Noblars, even if you do destroy them after 2 or 3 turns, they're probably going to do pretty well.
The other thing I suppose that I've been ruminating over with core now being sort of functionally super critical. Obviously the parry change in terms of saves. So most factions have a sword and shield unit as a core infantry.
Not Noblars, though.
Unit.
Not
Most
ogres.
factions.
In general.
And
Not for
most
cheap.
And they
factions
wouldn't
also
even get it because they're monstrous infantry. Isn't
most
that good?
factions also make the offering of going your variously expensive unit that has a sword and a shield is somewhere around 4 to 8 points.
Yep.
This parry save from a survivability standpoint or from a holding standpoint suddenly puts a lot of units from a scoring standpoint way up there in terms of value. So it's for people who are thinking about this and thinking about, oh, well, now I've listened to the Old World Behemoths and I'm going to change my army to include a lot of core. There's a lot to be said around making sure that you're designing in hand weapon shield units to take full advantage over the changes that have come out as a result of the latest effect.
Also
not that
really
we were
worth
gonna
noting-
discuss, not that we were going to discuss the FAQ, of course.
That's right.
No,
but I do have
not
to
the
say
ones-
the timing of the choosing weapons has changed. So now you choose that at the beginning of each fight.
Yeah.
So that makes it really cool. If you do have multiple weapons, there's just so much more option for infantry. You're not locked into one weapon for the foreseeable combats to come. You can tank a charge on your swords and shields, and then you can swap out to your great weapons or whatever. Like, it's really, really cool what they've done. And again, I'd highly recommend checking out some other content creators.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you on that later. Anyway, is that it?
I
for
wonder on
missions?
this one. Sorry, just quickly with baggage train on this particular deployment, I feel like the default position is if you're deployment zone B, it's the back right corner, right, 3 inches away from both sides. Like that must be like the default position. It'd be interesting to see where people place their baggage trains.
And that's why I think this might not lend itself for baggage trains, but it probably lends itself really nicely to special features, right? Because then you've just got a huge brawl in the center, but you can also flank out a lot. Like, it's really, really cool. Yeah. But that's the missions. So 4 out of 5, the main takeaway, if you take away nothing else, 4 out of 5 of the missions have compulsory end of turn scoring, right? Compulsory end of turn scoring, and they must be core. Okay. Really, really important. You're ranging from 30 victory points per turn per objective controlled, or 100 victory points if you're playing on King of the Hill scenario 2. And I just think that you really want to start thinking about core units and what they bring to the table. So that's what you can have a look at on this slide if you want to take it a bit slower. But let's move on. And I think scoring has changed a little bit as well. Chris, walk us through it.
So basically, this is the points table that GW suggests you use. I'm not so sure if TOs will buy in on this particular one, but basically what you got is 0 to 300 points gap is a draw. You both score 3 tournament points, which is what they're calling, I guess, the overall like event points. 301 to 750 is marginal victory. That's a 4-2. 751 to 1400 is a resounding victory. That's a 5-1. And 1400 plus is a crushing, and that's a 6-0. And then they've set the tiebreakers as total VPs, VPs for secondaries, which if you're a TO, that means you now have to track those separately, which is, I mean, depending on how you do your scoring, could be okay. Yep. And then the final one is enemy general slain. Again, you're going to have to track that if you're using this system. Now, I wanted to call this out in particular because if we contrast this to the existing table that a lot of TOs use, which is this one, I guess to kind of give you background on this, the 20 VP scoring system has been around for years and years and years. I personally don't understand why you would want to try and reinvent the wheel when it's already there. It's narrowed it. So this has, I think, 7 scoring bands. The other one only has 4. The problem with that is when you get to running an event and you've got the first round of results come in, if you've only got 4 scoring bands and you go to do pairings, your pairings are basically squashed. You're going to get someone who might have done a lot better in their game pairing off against someone who's didn't do as well just because their band is now a lot bigger because it's been squashed. Whereas the 20 total points system that we use in most of our events is you just have more bands, so it's a bit easier to do those pairings.
To speak perhaps in defense of the designers of the system, it's not inconceivable to look at it and say what they mean, or reading between the lines in terms of you get X amount of score, and yes, there are tiebreakers, but as far as round pairings go, it's not inconceivable then to do a comparison around, particularly if you're having to track all these things independently. Like it's a simple formula to go compare apples with apples when it comes to scores. Once you hit the point where it's like, these X amount of people have 6 BPs and this X amount of people have 5 BPs. So there's the ability. It's complicated and it's overly complicated, but there is the ability within at least that system, if you're willing to do a little bit of math or Excel setup, to get to a point where your pairings can be a bit more fair. But you totally make a good point. Why are we reinventing the wheel? I
think also because I've definitely played games where I've been sitting there and it's towards the end of the game and we've done the calculation on points. And I'm sitting at, 150 points. And in the existing table, which we have here, I can look at a unit and go, you know what? That's about 100 points over there. If I kill that unit, I know I go up a band straight away. Whereas if I go back to the GW one, because that band is now, the gap is much, much bigger.
It's huge.
Suddenly it's like, do I even bother going for that awesome end of turn play to try and kill that unit?
Which could speed things up in a lot of ways, right? True. It could stop a lot of the analysis paralysis. So that could be an aim of the game and just making things streamlined. And I do appreciate it. But yeah, look, time will tell. I think, my preference would be try from the book straight away. Don't make any crazy changes. Just see how it functions and then see what we need to tweak after
Yeah,
the fact.
my gut feeling, I mean, even from just the results that I'm sure we saw at the last Old Hammer, my gut feeling is the majority of matches are going to end up with that 750 points or less. Like the majority of them in terms of points differentials. And so
Yeah.
I maybe it's entirely designed to, again, account for fairness or account for making sure that people who have brought a list that's capable of sweeping the field of someone else's list only go up against one another, because
That's right.
you're not going to have an enormous amount of people getting 1,400 points or more from, certainly not from game one or sort of looking forward. So I don't know. Maybe Tom's right. Maybe it is a simplification factor. Maybe what they're trying to do is is a little bit of utilitarianism in terms of what's
Probably
the best
not,
approach.
but maybe,
I mean, probably
maybe
not.
they've stumbled across it.
It's nice to think about. It's nice to think about.
Yeah.
I do think.
So let's go.
Sorry, just to sum up, kind of those missions that we were just discussing, and I guess the book as a whole. If I'm a TO, it's a great book to have, because what it has is ideas that you can take from. I know, like if we go back a couple, like let's say this mission, right? It says this mission, this deployment, you must do this, you must do that. Hey, guess what? It's your game. You can mix these up however you want. You can change deployments, you can change mission types. As a TO, you have that power. Obviously, so long as you tell your players ahead of time. But these just all give you options to run events in
It's
new
a
and
much
interesting
nicer
ways.
way of keeping the missions fresh than they've applied
Yes.
before. Because I
Agreed.
mean, and thank
Especially
goodness
with the
they
may
didn't.
add this different secondary. Et
Yeah,
cetera.
but
It's
but
cool.
thank goodness they didn't go down the pathway of 40k too much, because secret
Yes.
objectives are a thing. But at the same time, thank goodness they just didn't dive down that pathway and make it so that you and your opponent are
main
playing
thing.
totally different games.
It is worth noting, secret objectives are in the book. They are considered an additional,
That's
option. I don't particularly think many TOs will go down that path, but the option is there.
The options there, and we're not going to talk about it. But you know, we went in. I think if you go back to the round breakdowns that I did at the WSWG event, you can see on our channel. You know, I took a very similar but very different approach to the games and the missions. And so, flick over to the next slide. You'll see sort of what I'm thinking of going forward with my ogres. So I've got a very similar character footprint in that I want my 3 characters to jump into a 9 or a large unit of Iron Guts. And that's going to, A, preserve a lot of points, B, have the Tyrant to tackle dragons and all that kind of stuff, have the Bruiser to keep things around with the BSB and the Rune Maw, which is fantastic as well. The Butcher has now become the Slaughtermaster has now become a Butcher, because the disparity between level 2 and level 4 has shrunk significantly. Now I'm either getting a +1 bonus or a +2 bonus. The real difference is the range of casting and dispel, which I really enjoy. Now, I've gone for a Butcher battle magic to do Oaken Shield, basically the same thing I was doing before, and then I can pivot into another spell. It might be Curse of Arrow Attraction, or it might be Arcane Urgency, right? They're really fun. And then I get to play around with things like Power Scrolls, because casting spells becomes so much more important now too, right? So I really want to make sure I'm getting off that Oaken Shield. I really want to make sure that I'm getting that clutch Arcane Urgency that one time. And if I get a D3 bonus to my spell, that puts me head and shoulders above other dispellers. I really love that change. And it's only a one-use item, but they're so much more important now, which is fantastic. And then if you go to the core, instead of having two Saber Tusks per 40 points, I've now got 20 Noblars per 40 points, right? And, you know, with all those strategic locations and all those missions, they're all unit strength 20. And that just seems like a really good idea, right?
And I will point out, in a world where most things, you know, when you're shooting and you're hitting things on 5s. Yeah, you might wound Noblars, but you still got to do 5 wounds to the unit to even get it to panic. So
that's right.
Even
more than
with
5,
no,
because it's more than 25%.
well, exactly. So six or more. So you've still got to do that many wounds. And yeah, you might have a capable enough shooting section of your army, but if you're having to dedicate all of that at a 40-point Noblar unit, what are you not shooting with it? Like
Exactly.
it's
The four
the
Mornfang that are about to charge you.
yeah, but the units, these cheap core infantry units, I feel they're just going to be so valuable.
And they look really cool too. You know, like they look
Let's
really
not go
cool.
too far.
The thing that I'm really worried about in this list, and I'd love to hear thoughts and comments from the viewers, but I don't know if the Mornfang, and I've said this before, but I don't know if the Mornfang are worth the 325 points now, right? Like potentially, I run more Iron Guts in a different unit, or potentially I run more Bulls in a different unit, and I bring 8 or something there, just to have another thick slab of core unit infantry that might be hard to displace. But it's a counter charge unit.
Yeah. It's a
The only
baggage
problem is
unit.
they're bloody weapon skill 3, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of
But
sucks.
they're
And
really
they're a
good
great
at,
baggage train.
yeah, grabbing
Exactly.
the baggage train.
Yeah, but I think you
even,
need
yeah. Sorry, even table quarters. I was going to say,
Yeah,
they can
and
just
that's
sweep
what I
through a
did.
table quarter.
I think you
Exactly.
need the mobility. And I think that's something that's going to be really heavily emphasized as we see lists emerge. Mobility is rewarded, but at the same time you need a stable core. So
Yeah.
I
You need
don't
stable unit
think
strength.
I
and
don't
core.
think lists that fully line up in rank and file big blocks of things are going to see as much versatility as you'd see with this sort of mixture of larger units or more powerful anvils that your hammers can play against, or even being able to, we mentioned the Illyrian Reavers taking units of 5. It's not to say that those units won't still have a role and
Definitely.
won't still exist. We talked about swooping in and jumping on objectives. We talked about
Yeah.
being able to follow up or being able to take advantage of opportunities that those high mobility cavalry units can do. I just think that there's just this, it's so much more layered than it was before.
Yeah,
And
100%.
from an event organizer standpoint, the match playbook, it offers you so much more variation in what you're able to offer to players.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think
Anyway.
it's also worth pointing out that if you're sitting there going, well, why don't I just max out core for like my entire army, as in like my whole army is just core. Yes, you might score objectives okay, but your output typically with core units is a lot lower.
Diminishes.
You kind of still need those hammers. You still need those range units. You still need the wizards and the characters to kind of push power at different points of the battlefield in order to shift core units around. If you just go, I'm going to run, I don't know, 200 Empire Halberdiers in various blocks, and I'm just going to sit on objectives, that's great. Probably not going to kill anything, and you're probably going to get pushed off those objectives. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can't skew one way or the other too hard.
Would love to hear what you guys think, and the audience members of what lists your rosters, lists and rosters you guys are thinking of. Whack them in the comments. Let us know. But that's our sort of very superficial take on the match playbook, and I hope that those slide summaries of each mission and each scenario go a long way. They certainly helped me sort of wrap my head around exactly what's going on. And if you have any questions, just let us know. But that's basically it. So let's move into our final chapter, which is some hobby. Alistair.
One more click, please. Shh, says the horse to the hissing snake. Yeah, more to come.
Kind of uncomfortable.
Some real life stuff is in the way.
This is a consequence of my eldest child learning phonetics at the moment at school, and the sort of stuff that she gets sent home with for us to practice with her. So that's where shh, says the horse to the hissing snake comes from. Personal favorite of mine, but in terms of hobby, I'm gonna leave it very much a mystery for the moment. Obviously, we have the event at the end of the month that we're focused really on in making sure that we're delivering all the things that we've promised and making sure our prize support is in the right place. But I think the next army that we see, depending on when the next event is, because I'm not sure I'll be able to make the next Old Hammer, but depending on when the next event is that we're sort of able to go. Now I'm in the new house. Now I have a bit more space. Now that my hobby setup is changing a little bit more. Shh, we'll see. Anyway, move on.
My hobby. So for those who don't know, those who aren't Australian, Centrelink is for jobless people. I'm currently jobless, currently trying to find work, also trying to skill up. So it just means it's chewing up all my free time. I'd love to be doing a hobby. I am trying to do a little bit of hobby when I can, but life
But the
unfortunately,
behemoths are behind you, aren't they,
yeah.
Chris?
But life
We'll
has
help
to
you
come.
wherever we can.
Just
Life
he
has to come first.
gives a really mean hot oil massage.
I
Just
do. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good. That's
$60.
me.
That's all it costs.
Sorry. The actual hobby that I'm doing, I've been discussing with my partner for the doubles event, and I'm just working out what units I need to paint up for that. So it's probably going to be saber tusks, just to smash them out. But I'll be doing that in the next week or two. Hopefully, when I have a job and I can relax a bit more. But yeah, that's me.
It's not Warmaster. Thank God.
It's not
Not
All
a
right.
different system.
the
Yeah.
actual
So
hobby.
I'm back. I'm back on the
Tommy,
hobby
baby.
horse,
Back in a
which has
big
been
way.
unbelievable. Unfortunately, again, I live in not the best lit place.
Are you in a prison? It kind of looks like a prison.
No, it's an old warehouse. It's an old ladder factory, actually. But I don't know if you can see. I've been working on my tyrant, using all the tidbits and tricks that I've sort of used across some of my other ogre models. Except this time, I thought I'd make him a little bit more well traveled, maybe a little bit of a an odd duck in the ogre family. So this guy's actually gone out and he keeps his tools a little bit more well maintained, and he's not as rusty. And he wears some nice tailored pants that happen to be blue. It was also a sort of a good painting exercise in jade and blues, which I hadn't really done before, and that's a cool lead into a potential cafe hobby fiasco. And I wanted to try metals that weren't strictly gold or silver. So I had a bit of a crack with like a pink metal on the shoulder, and I did a bit of bone and a gemstone on his on his necklace there as well. Really, really happy with how he's turning out, and obviously it looks a lot better in person. But one of my mates, Ed McBurney, friend to the podcast, has lent me a light box. Not a patron, but that doesn't matter. He gave me a light box.
Nice.
So I'm going to try and take some better photos for the next episode and hopefully finish this guy off and get some basing material on him.
It's giving me
but I'm really happy.
Me gladiator vibes. It looks so good.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go in and sort of synchronize him with some of the other models by putting a little bit of oxidization and
rust
and verdigris on him.
Yeah.
But I really want to keep that silver a little bit more poppy. And I'm just going to dirty up the chainmail and do some more scratchy stuff. But yeah, really happy with how he's turning out, and he looks a lot better in real life. But it feels good to be painting again.
What's your basing scheme for your army?
It's going to be basically Alistair's snow and mud base, except I'm not. You've got a bit of
without the controversial products.
Without the controversial products, and you've got a bit more of a green hue. I'm going to go for a bit more of a like a dark grey black sort of soil to represent them all coming down from the top of the mountains of Morn. But the head cannon, right? The head cannon at the moment is that old mate here, the tyrant. He's chuffed off to Cathay for some light mercenary work
got some great
to feed the family. He's come back, pants and rustless, and he's bringing the boys down to Cathay, and anything that gets in their way is going to be eaten. So, yeah, really keen to see where the army goes. And the unit of like the 12 ogres looks so good, it looks so good. So I'm very, very excited to finish them off.
Well, it's got to make up for the
some more.
60 Noblars, right?
I haven't even got 60. I haven't even got one. So I'll have to start somewhere, and I'm very excited.
I'm quite looking forward to the challenge that's going to present to a hobbyist.
Because I'm not contrast painting. You know me, right? Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll quit the channel and quit Behemoths and just give up on the old world after painting 5. But we'll see.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Maybe.
All right.
Alistair, take us home.
I don't know if I added this in and you're presenting for the live pack, or you added it in, Chris. Thank you for doing so if you did. I have to keep my voice down.
That's fine.
Okay,
I did not do it.
Okay, so I added it in, and it's now picked it up, which is great. I will have to keep my voice down because my son has just woken up in the next room. But a big shout out to Exiles in Marrickville for again helping us host our very first returning, I should say, event. It is a narrative-style doubles tournament. We currently have 11 teams. We've still got some time to pull in a few more. So if you're watching this and you haven't yet secured yourself a spot, by all means, go right ahead and do so. Lists are due relatively soon. We're not going to be distributing them, though, to people ahead of time. They're going to be a little bit of a surprise and a secret when players get to know one another and get to introduce their armies. But we're super excited to be offering some really interesting prizes. It's a no cash prizes event. We're doing a few things a little bit differently using some of the craft that we have available and some of the really great tools that we have access to as well. So very much looking forward to that. Having 22 people frankly already signed up for the event is pretty massive, but we have space. We do have space to go to 32. So by all means, again, if you've not secured yourself a spot and you would like to, the players pack you can find, we might as well put a link in the description for this video to the players pack.
Yeah, we will.
Check it out. Send us an email if you're interested. We'll sign you up and then hopefully see you on the day.
Just worth noting, because of weird timing, we didn't know that the match play guide was going to have doubles in it. We're not using those rules, and we're not using the doubles rules, the missions, or like how to structure and
no,
do scoring.
but
So
as you'll probably see from reviewing the mission pack, our progressive scoring mission is functionally one of the missions out of the match playbook, and it works in a very similar way. The other two are objective-based end-of-game scoring missions. There are restrictions in terms of army list building and a few other bits that we've introduced just again to try and make sure that this is both a beginner-friendly event and also very narrative-focused.
But I think,
so again.
I think hilariously our allies chart was almost exactly the same as what the one in the book is. So there you go.
Was it Nosferatu or Nostradamus?
Nostradamus. Nosferatu's the vampire.
Nosferatu's vampire.
That was the joke.
Yeah, good
Thanks,
one.
Mate.
I won't claim any credit for it, but it's absolutely all me. But anyway,
they just had to get it bound and printed and published and edited, a year or two ago. But yeah, no, that's fair.
Correct. No, I just pulled it out of the dregs of my prophetic mind. I think that's a really good place for us to wrap up, though. Is there anything else that we need to cover? I think that's it.
That's it.
Thank you, Tom, for doing an awful lot of prep work around the match play pack. I think it's a really interesting opportunity for all of us who are part of the Old World community to get involved, to get interested. For the TOs, I'll be super interested to see what the next big formal events in Sydney start to look like using the match playbook. It's a little bit of a shame that we organised our event and then it sort of came out as a result. Happens. But that said, like I mentioned, my prophetic talent has meant that a lot of our missions do quite closely align with the new match play structures. They're just a little different. So consider it a little
God's
bit of a
gift to the earth, Alistair.
I know. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me. But consider it a little bit of a transition from the old to the new. But anyway, let's leave it there. I'm going to help console my son, and we're all eventually going to go to bed because it's 11:10 at night. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you've made it to an hour and 43 minutes, we very much appreciate your time. If you'd like to become a patron, you can check out the link in the show notes, along with the mission pack the players pack for our doubles event coming up on Sunday, the 27th of July. But from myself, from Tom, Chris, and Alex, the Old World Behemoths, thank you so much for watching. We will catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.